Dr. Amanda Clark rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the computer screen in the quiet research facility. It was 3 in the morning and she was alone in the building, except for the security guard who made his rounds every few hours. The radio telescopes outside had been scanning the stars for months without finding anything interesting. Most nights were like this, watching endless streams of cosmic noise that meant nothing to anyone except scientists who hoped to find proof that humans were not alone in the universe. The coffee in her cup had gone cold hours ago, but she kept drinking it anyway. Her job at the Kepler research facility was to listen for signals from space that might come from intelligent beings on other worlds. So far, after 10 years of work, she had found exactly nothing that could not be explained by natural phenomena, like pulsars or black holes or cosmic radiation. Her colleagues often joked that she was waiting for aliens to call Earth like it was some kind of cosmic telephone service. Then something changed on her screen. A new signal appeared that was different from anything she had ever seen before. It was not the random static that filled most of space or the regular patterns that came from spinning stars. This signal had structure and purpose. It repeated in complex patterns that suggested intelligence behind its creation. Amanda sat up straight in her chair and felt her heart start beating faster. She called Dr. Kevin Walsh, who lived only 20 minutes away from the facility. Kevin was a linguist who specialized in communication patterns and had been helping with the project for 5 years. He arrived at the facility still wearing his pajamas under a heavy coat and immediately started working on decoding the strange transmission. "This is incredible," Kevin said as he studied the patterns on his computer. "Look at how it repeats certain sequences but changes others. This is definitely artificial. Someone or something created this signal on purpose." Amanda also called Lisa Harper, who worked as a communications expert for the project. Lisa had experience with military radio systems and understood how to extract information from damaged or incomplete transmissions. When she arrived at the facility an hour later, she brought equipment from her home laboratory that could clean up the signal and make it easier to understand. The 3 scientists worked through the rest of the night and into the next day. They took turns sleeping on the couch in the break room, while the others continued analyzing the mysterious transmission. Slowly, they began to understand what they were hearing. The signal contained mathematical concepts that proved it came from intelligent beings. It also contained star charts that showed the location where it was transmitted from. But the most shocking discovery came when Lisa managed to decode what appeared to be the actual message content. The transmission was not meant for Earth at all. It was a distress call sent by beings who called themselves the Zephyrian Empire. They were asking for help from someone they called the Ascended Collective. The message described a terrible enemy that was destroying their worlds and killing their people. "They call them the Devourers," Kevin said as he read the translated text. "According to this message, these Devourers are some kind of ancient machines that consume entire civilizations. The Zephyrians are losing the war and they need military assistance immediately." Amanda studied the star charts that came with the message. According to her calculations, the transmission had originated from a star system that was thousands of light years away from Earth. But something was wrong with the trajectory of the signal. It should have been aimed at a completely different part of the galaxy. "I think there was an accident," she told her colleagues. "Look at these coordinates. The message was supposed to go toward the Andromeda galaxy, but something bent its path. Maybe a neutron star collision or some other cosmic event. Instead of reaching their allies, the signal came here to us." The implications were staggering. Somewhere in space, an alien civilization was fighting for its survival against an enemy that sounded more terrifying than anything humans had ever imagined. They had called for help from their most powerful allies, but due to a cosmic accident, their desperate plea had reached Earth instead. The Zephyrians had no idea that their distress call had been received by a species that most galactic civilizations would probably consider primitive. Amanda knew she had to report the discovery to her superiors, but she also realized this was the most important moment in human history. First contact with alien intelligence was supposed to happen gradually with careful protocols and international cooperation. Instead, it was happening in a research facility in the middle of the night with 3 exhausted scientists who had stumbled upon a misdirected cry for help. She called Admiral Patricia Young, who was in charge of the newly created Space Defense Command. The military had been quietly preparing for the possibility of contact with alien civilizations for several years. They had weapons and ships that the public did not know about. Admiral Young arrived at the facility within 6 hours, accompanied by a team of military communications specialists. "Are you certain this transmission is genuine?" Admiral Young asked after reviewing all the data. "This could be the most elaborate hoax in human history." Kevin showed her the mathematical proofs embedded in the signal. No human government has the resources to create something this complex. The star charts alone contain information about stellar positions that we have never observed from Earth. This is real. Admiral Young studied the translated message for a long time. The Zephyrians were describing weapons and technologies that were far beyond human understanding. They were fighting an enemy that had been consuming civilizations for millions of years. Their request for help was addressed to beings they obviously considered to be their technological equals or superiors. "They have no idea they sent this message to us," Admiral Young said finally. "They think they are calling the most advanced military force in their part of the galaxy. What happens when they discover they reached a species that has barely left its own solar system?" Amanda looked at the Admiral and made a decision that would change everything. We could just ignore the message. Pretend we never received it. Let them think their allies never got the call for help. But Admiral Young was already shaking her head. "These devourers sound like a threat to all intelligent life. If the Zephyrians lose this war, what happens next? Do these machines stop consuming civilizations, or do they keep expanding across the galaxy until they reach Earth?" Lisa Harper had been quiet during most of the conversation, but now she spoke up. "We have the coordinates of their location. We know they need help. The question is whether humanity is ready to answer a call we were never supposed to receive." Admiral Young made the decision that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. "Dr. Clark, send a response to their signal. Tell them we received their call for help. Tell them humanity is coming." The message was transmitted into space 12 hours after the original signal had been decoded. It was simple and direct. "We received your call for help. Coordinates received. Humanity is coming." The words traveled at the speed of light toward a star system, where desperate aliens were fighting for their survival against an ancient evil. None of them could have predicted how those few words would change everything for both species. President Helen Carter had been in office for only 8 months when she received the phone call that changed everything. It was 4 in the morning when her security chief woke her up to tell her that Admiral Young needed to speak with her immediately about a matter of national security. The president put on her robe and walked to the secure communication room in the White House, where she could speak privately with the Admiral. "Madam President, we have received a message from space," Admiral Young said without any introduction. "Not just radio signals or natural phenomena, but an actual communication from an alien civilization that is asking for military help. They are fighting a war against something they call the Devourers." President Carter sat down heavily in her chair. Every president since the 1950s had been briefed about the possibility of contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, but none of them had expected it to happen during their time in office. The protocols for first contact assumed that aliens would either visit Earth directly or send peaceful messages of greeting. Nobody had planned for aliens asking humans to join them in a war. "How do we know this is real?" the president asked. "Could this be some kind of test or deception from another country?" Admiral Young explained about the signal that Dr. Amanda Clark had discovered and the teams of scientists who had verified its authenticity. The mathematical concepts and star charts embedded in the message contained information that no human government could have created. The transmission had definitely come from outside the solar system and showed clear signs of non-human intelligence. Within 12 hours, President Carter had convened an emergency meeting of the Global Defense Council. Leaders from every major nation gathered in a secure facility beneath the Pentagon to discuss humanity's response to the alien message. General Marcus Stone was called in to brief them about secret projects that most of the world leaders had never heard of before. "For the past 15 years, we have been developing faster-than-light travel based on theoretical work by Dr. Ryan Brooks and his team," General Stone explained to the astonished leaders. "We call it the Starflight Project, and we have been building ships that can travel between star systems in a matter of weeks rather than centuries. The technology had been developed in complete secrecy using resources from multiple countries. Dr. Brooks had discovered a way to manipulate space-time that allowed objects to travel faster than light without violating the laws of physics. The first successful test had been conducted only 6 months earlier, when an unmanned probe had traveled to the nearest star and returned with detailed measurements of the Alpha Centauri system. "We have one ship that is ready for a crewed mission," General Stone continued. "The UES Defiant is equipped with our most advanced technology and can carry a crew of 12 people. We built it for exploration missions, but it could be modified for first contact with alien civilizations." President Carter looked around the room at the faces of world leaders who were still trying to process what they were hearing. "General Stone, how long would it take to reach the coordinates that these Zephyrians provided in their message?" "Approximately 3 weeks using our current drive technology," the general replied. "But Madam President, we have no idea what we would find when we got there. These aliens are fighting a war against an enemy that sounds extremely dangerous. We could be sending our people into a battle that they are not prepared for." The debate that followed lasted for 18 hours. Some leaders wanted to ignore the alien message completely and pretend that humans had never received it. Others argued that humanity had a moral obligation to help any species that was fighting against something called the Devourers. A few suggested sending a response message, but not actually traveling to alien space until they knew more about the situation. In the end, it was President Carter who made the final decision. "We are going to respond to their call for help. If these Devourers are as dangerous as the message suggests, then they could eventually threaten Earth as well. We need to know what we are dealing with, and we cannot learn that by staying home." Captain Jake Morrison was chosen to command the first human interstellar mission. He was the experienced pilot who had tested many of the experimental spacecraft that led to the development of faster-than-light travel. His crew included Chief Engineer Nicole Davis, who understood the new drive technology better than anyone except Dr. Brooks himself. Lieutenant Commander Chris Taylor was assigned as tactical officer because of his experience with advanced weapon systems. Dr. Sophie Turner joined the mission as xenobiologist to study any alien life forms they might encounter. The UES Defiant launched from a secret facility in Nevada, exactly 72 hours after President Carter authorized the mission. The ship looked nothing like the rockets that had carried humans into Earth orbit. It was sleek and angular, with a hull made from materials that could withstand the stresses of faster-than-light travel. The drive system took up most of the rear section of the ship and glowed with a blue light that seemed to bend space around itself. Nicole Davis monitored the drive systems as the ship accelerated away from Earth. The technology still seemed like magic even to the engineers who had built it. Space twisted and folded around the ship, allowing it to move through dimensions that normal matter could not access. Stars streaked past the viewports in patterns that human eyes had never seen before. 3 weeks to reach an alien star system, Captain Morrison said as he watched Earth disappear behind them. 6 months ago, the fastest we could travel was the speed of our chemical rockets. Now we are crossing interstellar space like it was an ocean voyage. The journey gave the crew time to study everything they knew about the Zephyrian message. Dr. Turner worked with linguists back on Earth to understand more of the alien language. The Zephyrians seemed to be a peaceful species that had been forced into war by an enemy they had not chosen. Their technology was clearly more advanced than human science, but they were losing the conflict badly. When the Defiant finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the coordinates provided by the aliens, the crew found themselves looking at something that no human had ever seen before. A massive space battle was taking place around a star system with planets that glowed different colors. Strange ships that looked more like living creatures than machines were fighting against geometric vessels that seemed to absorb light and energy. Captain Morrison opened communication channels on the frequencies that the Zephyrians had used in their original message. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Defiant. We received your call for help. We are here to assist you." The response came immediately from one of the larger bioships. The voice was translated by the communication system into English, but it still sounded alien and musical. "Humans. We do not know this species. How did you receive our transmission to the Ascended Collective?" Captain Morrison realized that they were about to become the first humans to have a real conversation with intelligent aliens. "Your message was misdirected by a cosmic accident. We intercepted it by chance. We came as soon as we could." There was a long pause before the alien voice responded again. "You came from the edge of the galaxy to answer our call. Your ship is small, and your weapons are unknown to us. What help can you provide against the Devourers? Before Captain Morrison could answer, one of the geometric enemy ships turned toward the human vessel and began approaching at high speed. The Devourer ship moved toward the UES Defiant like a dark triangle cutting through space. Captain Jake Morrison had never seen anything like it before. The alien vessel seemed to absorb light and energy from everything around it, making the stars behind it appear dimmer. It was 3 times larger than the human ship and covered with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "All hands to battle stations," Captain Morrison announced over the ship's communication system. "Chief Davis, I need everything our engines can give us. Commander Taylor, prepare all weapons for combat." Nicole Davis worked frantically at her engineering station to boost power to the ship's systems. The experimental human technology had never been tested in actual combat conditions. She rerouted power from life support and non-essential systems to give the weapons and shields maximum energy. The ship's reactor hummed with increased activity as it prepared for its first reel. Battle Lieutenant Commander Chris Taylor activated the weapon systems that had been installed on the Defiant before it left Earth. The ship carried kinetic projectiles that could be accelerated to incredible speeds using magnetic fields. It also had nuclear warheads that could be launched like missiles at enemy targets. The weapons were primitive compared to what other spacefaring civilizations might use, but they had been designed to work in the vacuum of space. "Target approaching at high speed," Taylor reported as he tracked the enemy ship on his sensors. "Whatever that thing is made of, it's not showing up clearly on our scanners. It's like it's absorbing our sensor beams." Dr. Sophie Turner watched from her station as the alien ship closed the distance between them. She had studied every piece of information available about the Devourers from the Zephyrian message, but seeing one in person was completely different. The ship looked less like a machine and more like a living shadow that had taken geometric form. Commander Vexhai of the Zephyrian Defense Corps watched the encounter from his flagship with growing concern. The human vessel was tiny compared to the Devourer ship, and its technology seemed primitive by galactic standards. He had been fighting these ancient enemies for months and had seen entire fleets destroyed by ships just like the one approaching the newcomers. "Human vessel, this is Commander Vexhai," he broadcast on the communication channel. "You must retreat immediately. Your ship cannot survive combat with a Devourer. They absorb energy weapons and their hulls are nearly indestructible." Captain Morrison heard the warning, but there was no time to retreat. The Devourer ship was already within weapons range and showed no signs of changing course. "Commander Taylor, fire everything we have at that target. Show them what human weapons can do." The first kinetic projectile left the Defiant at nearly half the speed of light. It was a simple piece of dense metal accelerated by magnetic coils, but it carried more kinetic energy than most civilizations used in their energy weapons. The projectile struck the Devourer ship and punched completely through its hull, creating a hole that vented atmosphere and debris into space. The geometric alien ship seemed to pause as if surprised by the damage. Devourer technology was designed to absorb and redirect energy attacks, but kinetic weapons worked on completely different principles. The ancient machines had not encountered this type of warfare for millions of years. "Direct hit," Commander Taylor reported with excitement in his voice. "Their hull is damaged, but the ship is still operational." Firing nuclear missiles. 3 nuclear warheads launched from the Defiant and streaked toward the Devourer vessel. The enemy ship tried to intercept them with energy beams, but the missiles were too small and fast to target effectively. All 3 warheads detonated against the alien hull in brilliant flashes of nuclear fire. Commander Vexhai could not believe what he was seeing. The small human ship had just inflicted more damage on a Devourer in 30 seconds than his entire fleet had managed in hours of combat. The geometric enemy vessel was listing to one side and dark fluid was leaking from multiple hull breaches. "Impossible," Vexhai said to his tactical officer. "How are they hurting a Devourer with such primitive weapons?" The answer came from his science officer, who had been monitoring the human attack. "Commander, their weapons do not use energy at all. They are using kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives. The Devourers have no defense against physical impacts because no species has used such weapons for thousands of years." The damaged Devourer ship attempted to retreat, but Captain Morrison was not finished with it yet. "Chief Davis, give me ramming speed. We're going to finish this thing before it can escape." Nicole Davis pushed the ship's engines beyond their normal limits. The UES Defiant accelerated toward the wounded enemy vessel like a spear thrown at a target. At the last moment, she activated the ship's emergency systems that would protect the crew from the impact they were about to experience. The human ship struck the Devourer vessel at tremendous speed. The collision tore both ships apart in the explosion of metal and energy, but the Defiant had been built with human engineering that prioritized survival over elegance. The crew compartment was surrounded by layers of armor and shock absorption systems that kept them alive, even as the rest of their ship disintegrated around them. Emergency systems activated automatically as the wreckage of both ships drifted through space. The crew of the Defiant found themselves in their emergency shelter waiting for rescue, while pieces of the destroyed Devourer ship floated past their viewports. They had just won humanity's first space battle, but their ship was too damaged to continue fighting. Commander Vexhai ordered his flagship to move toward the human wreckage. His people had technology that could save the brave newcomers who had just demonstrated a completely new way to fight the ancient enemy. As Zephyrian rescue ships approached the human, survivors, Vexhai opened a communication channel to speak with Captain Morrison. Human, Captain, you and your crew have just accomplished something that our greatest warriors could not do, Vexhai said with respect in his musical voice. You destroyed a Devourer ship in single combat. How is this possible with such primitive technology? Captain Morrison's voice came through the communication system, even though his ship was badly damaged. Commander, we may not have energy weapons or advanced shields, but humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We know how to break things. The Zephyrian rescue ships brought the human survivors aboard their bio-vessels. Dr. Sophie Turner got her first close look at alien beings as the Zephyrians treated the injured members of her crew. They were tall and graceful with silver skin and large eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. Their technology was organic and beautiful, in ways that human engineering could never match, but it was the conversation between Captain Morrison and Commander Vex that would change the course of the war. The Zephyrian commander wanted to understand how such a primitive species had defeated an enemy that his advanced civilization could barely damage. Your people fight differently than any species we have encountered, Vexhai explained as medical teams treated the human crew. Most civilizations develop beyond physical violence as they advance technologically. They fight with energy and information rather than kinetic force. Captain Morrison nodded as he understood what the alien was telling him. You've all become too civilized to fight dirty. But humans haven't forgotten how to be brutal when we need to be. The implications were staggering. An entire galaxy of advanced civilizations had evolved beyond the primitive warfare that humans still practiced. They had developed elegant weapons and sophisticated tactics that worked perfectly against each other but were useless against an enemy like the Devourers. Commander Vexhai realized that these newcomers might be exactly what the galaxy needed to win a war that had seemed impossible to victory. News of the first battle spread across Earth faster than any government could control it. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was working late in her office at the International Relations Institute when she received a phone call from her contact at the Pentagon. The caller told her that humanity had made contact with alien civilizations and was now involved in an interstellar war. Elena had spent her career studying how different human cultures interacted with each other, but nothing had prepared her for the challenge of understanding alien psychology. Within 24 hours, Elena was on a military transport flying to a secret facility where she would lead a team of experts in analyzing Zephyrian culture and communication patterns. The government needed to understand their new allies before sending more human ships into battle. Elena brought with her a team of anthropologists and psychologists who would help humanity navigate its first relationships with non-human intelligence. General Marcus Stone was already working on expanding human military production beyond anything the world had ever seen. He called meetings with industrial leaders from every major nation to coordinate the largest manufacturing effort in human history. The general explained that Earth needed to build hundreds of warships in a matter of months rather than years. Alex Chen was the head of the largest technology corporation in Asia, and he volunteered his entire manufacturing network for the war effort. His factories had been building computers and communication devices, but they could be converted to produce weapons and ship components. Alex understood that this war was Not just about helping alien allies, but about proving that humanity deserved a place among the stars. Janet Williams controlled mining, operations across 3 continents, and she offered to provide all the raw materials that the military would need. Her companies could extract metals and rare elements from the Earth faster than anyone had thought possible. Janet had built her business empire by solving impossible logistical problems, and she saw the alien war as the ultimate challenge for human industry. The second wave of human ships began construction in shipyards that were built in a matter of weeks. Unlike the sleek designs favored by most galactic civilizations, human engineers created vessels that looked like flying weapons platforms. The ships were covered with armor plating and bristled with kinetic cannons and missile launchers. They were not beautiful, but they were designed to survive combat and destroy enemies. Rear Admiral Ben Parker was chosen to command the Second Human Fleet when it was ready for deployment. He had spent his career studying naval warfare and understood how to coordinate multiple ships in complex battle situations. His flagship would be the UES Thunderstrike, a massive vessel that carried enough firepower to level a small city. The 20 ships of the Second Fleet launched from Earth 3 weeks after Captain Morrison's first encounter with the Devourers. Each vessel carried a crew of experienced military personnel who had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in human history. They knew they were traveling to a war zone where they would face enemies that had been destroying civilizations for millions of years. Captain Lisa Thompson commanded the UES Valor, one of the new battleships in Admiral Parker's fleet. Her ship was equipped with the latest human weapons technology, including mass drivers that could accelerate projectiles to incredible speeds. The Valor also carried nuclear missiles that had been specially designed for use against Devourer hulls. When the human fleet arrived at the Zephyrian star system, they found a situation that was much worse than anyone had expected. The Devourers had reinforced their positions and were systematically destroying the remaining Zephyrian colonies. Commander. Vexhi's forces had been pushed back to their last stronghold around the system's central star. Admiral Parker met with Commander Vexhi aboard the Zephyrian flagship to plan their joint strategy. The alien commander had been studying human tactics since the first battle and was amazed by how different human thinking was from galactic norms. Where other species tried to minimize casualties and avoid collateral damage, humans seemed to embrace controlled chaos as a weapon. Your people fight, like the ancient warrior races that existed before the Great Civilizing, Vexhi told Admiral Parker through the translation system. Most species evolve beyond such aggressive tactics as they develop advanced technology. Humans appear to have retained their predatory instincts while gaining scientific knowledge. Admiral Parker nodded as he studied the tactical displays showing Devourer positions throughout the star system. Commander, we've been fighting wars on Earth for thousands of years. We've learned that sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to hit him harder than he hits you. The Battle of the Void Gardens became the turning point in the war against the Devourers. Captain Thompson led her squadron in a direct assault on the enemy formation, using tactics that the ancient machines had never encountered before. Instead of the elegant long-range energy exchanges, favored by most galactic civilizations, the humans employed what they called shock and awe warfare. The UES Valor opened fire with its mass drivers, sending streams of kinetic projectiles into the Devourer fleet at significant fractions of light speed. The enemy ships tried to absorb the incoming energy, but discovered that solid matter traveling at extreme velocity could not be redirected or neutralized. Hull plating shattered and internal systems were destroyed by the brutal impacts. Colonel Frank Martinez pioneered a new tactic that terrified both allies and enemies. His assault teams used small ships to ram directly into damaged Devourer vessels, then fought their way through the enemy ships in hand-to-hand combat. The idea of boarding enemy vessels was considered impossible by most galactic species who could not imagine fighting in the cramped corridors of alien ships, but humans had been fighting in tight spaces for their entire history. Martinez and his Marines moved through Devourer ships like they were clearing buildings in urban warfare. They used explosives to destroy critical systems and kinetic weapons. To fight the mechanical defenders they encountered inside the enemy hulls, the Devourers had not faced this kind of warfare for millions of years. Their technology was designed to counter the civilized combat methods used by advanced galactic civilizations. They had no defense against species that were willing to ram ships into their enemies or fight battles inside damaged. Vessel's Commander Vexhai watched the human assault with a mixture of admiration and horror. These newcomers were demonstrating levels of violence and aggression that his people had not seen since the earliest days of their civilization. Yet their brutality was precisely what the galaxy needed to defeat an enemy that conventional warfare could not touch. Dr. Nathan Pierce was a human scientist who had been working with Zephyrian researchers to understand Devourer technology. His analysis of captured enemy systems revealed something that changed everything they thought they knew about the ancient machines. The Devourers were not just individual ships operating independently, but were connected by a vast network of quantum communication. They're all linked together, Dr. Pierce explained to Admiral Parker and Commander Vexhai during a strategy meeting. Every Devourer ship and installation is part of a single collective intelligence. That's why they coordinate so perfectly, and why they've been able to consume civilizations for millions of years. The discovery meant that defeating individual Devourer ships was not enough to win the war. The collective intelligence would simply build more vessels and continue its campaign of destruction. To truly defeat the enemy, humanity would need to find a way to disrupt or destroy the network that connected all Devourer forces across the galaxy. Dr. Pierce believed he could create a weapon that would interfere with the quantum communication system, but it would require a ship to penetrate deep into Devourer-controlled space. The mission would be essentially suicide because no vessel had ever returned from the core, regions where the collective intelligence was strongest. Admiral Parker knew that asking for volunteers for such a mission would be unnecessary. Every human in the fleet had come to alien space knowing they might not return home. The question was not who would volunteer, but which ship and crew would have the best chance of success. Captain Maria Santos volunteered for the suicide mission before Admiral Parker had finished explaining what they needed to do. Her ship, the UES Retribution, had been specially built for deep penetration strikes behind enemy lines. It was smaller and faster than the main battleships, but carried enough firepower to fight its way through heavily defended space. Dr. Nathan Pierce had spent weeks working with Zephyrian scientists to create what he called the Neural Cascade Disruptor. The weapon was designed to interfere with the quantum communication network that connected all Devourer forces across the galaxy. But to be effective, it had to be deployed at the center of the enemy collective, where the signal was strongest. Sergeant Roy Mitchell was the demolitions expert who would be responsible for placing the device once they reached their target. He had volunteered for the mission knowing that there would be no way to escape after the weapon was activated. Roy had spent his career blowing up things that other people said could not be destroyed, and he saw this as the ultimate challenge. Lieutenant Amy Foster would handle communications during the mission and try to maintain contact with the main fleet for as long as possible. Her job was to send back information about what they found in Devourer space so that future human missions would know what to expect. Amy understood that she might be transmitting the last messages that anyone would ever receive from the Retribution. Corporal Danny Wright was the systems analyst who would monitor the ship's performance as they traveled deeper into enemy territory than any Allied vessel had ever gone. His equipment could detect Devourer ships at long range and help them avoid large concentrations of enemy forces. Danny had studied every piece of data available about Devourer technology and knew their destination was more dangerous than anywhere humans had ever traveled. The mission launched from the hidden base that Admiral Parker had established in the outer regions of the Zephyrian star system. Commander Vexhai watched the small human ship disappear into hyperspace, knowing that the fate of his entire civilization now depended on 5 humans who were willing to sacrifice themselves for species they had only recently met. The journey to the Devourer home system took 2 weeks of careful navigation through space that was controlled by the ancient enemy. Captain Santos used every trick she had learned during her military career to avoid detection by the massive fleets of geometric ships that patrolled the region. The Retribution moved like a ghost through star systems that had been stripped of all life by millions of years of consumption. What they found when they reached their destination was beyond anything that human imagination could have conceived. The Devourer home system contained a structure that was larger than most planets and seemed to extend into dimensions that normal space could not contain. It was not built but grown like some kind of mechanical cancer that had been expanding for eons. My God, Captain Santos whispered as she looked at the monstrous construction through the ship's viewports. How many civilizations did they consume to build something like this? Dr. Pierce monitored the quantum signals coming from the massive structure and confirmed that it was indeed the central node of the Devourer collective intelligence. Every enemy ship in the galaxy was controlled from this location, and destroying it would cripple the entire network. But the structure was defended by thousands of Devourer vessels and protected by energy fields that could vaporize normal matter. The approach to the target required the Retribution to fight its way through defensive formations that included ships larger than anything the humans had previously encountered. Captain Santos used the ship's superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the worst of the enemy fire, while Sergeant Mitchell prepared the neural cascade disruptor for deployment. Lieutenant Foster managed to maintain communication with the main fleet long enough to transmit detailed information about the Devourer central structure. Her final message to Admiral Parker and Commander Vexai described the weapons deployment and wished both species good luck in the battles that would follow. The neural cascade disruptor activated just as the Retribution was destroyed by concentrated enemy fire from the defensive fleet. Dr. Pierce's weapon sent cascading disruption waves through the quantum network that connected all Devourer forces. The effect was instantaneous and devastating as millions of enemy ships across the galaxy suddenly lost their connection to the collective intelligence. Admiral Parker received confirmation that the mission had succeeded when Devourer ships throughout the Zephyrian system suddenly stopped their coordinated attacks and began operating as confused individual units. Without the central intelligence to guide them, the ancient machines were reduced to following basic programming that made them predictable and vulnerable. General Victoria Lewis had been preparing for this moment back on Earth, where she commanded the largest military construction project in human history. When word came that the neural cascade disruptor had worked, she authorized the launch of Operation Thunderstrike. Every ship that humanity could build had been assembled into a massive fleet that would finish what Captain Santos and her crew had started. Dr. Paul Anderson and Dr. Helen Morgan had developed new weapons specifically designed to exploit the weakness that Dr. Pierce had discovered in Devourer technology. Their reality anchors could force normal physics into the pocket dimensions where the most powerful enemy structures were hidden. The weapons had never been tested in combat, but they represented humanity's best hope for ending the war permanently. The final battle took place in the twisted space around the damaged Devourer central structure. Admiral Rebecca Scott led the combined human and Zephyrian fleets in an assault that would determine the future of both civilizations. Her ships moved through dimensions where space folded in impossible directions while fighting enemies that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years. Captain Jerry Powell commanded the UES Vengeance during the climactic assault on the Devourer core. His ship was equipped with Dr. Anderson's reality anchors and had the responsibility of penetrating the enemy's final defenses. The weapons performed beyond expectations and allowed human ships to fight effectively, even in the bizarre physics of the pocket dimension. The moment that defined the entire war came when the surviving Devourer intelligence attempted to negotiate with the attacking forces. The collective consciousness offered to spare humanity and their allies in exchange for being allowed to continue consuming other species in distant parts of the galaxy. Admiral Scott's response became legendary throughout known space. You called the wrong species for mercy. Humanity doesn't negotiate with monsters. The destruction of the Devourer core sent shockwaves through quantum space that reached every corner of the galaxy. Ancient machines that had been consuming civilizations for millions of years suddenly ceased to function as their controlling intelligence was finally destroyed. The threat that had terrified countless species was ended by newcomers who had answered a misdirected call for help. Commander Vexai stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the debris of the Devourer structure drift through normal space. The war that had seemed impossible to win was over, and his people were free to rebuild their civilization. But more importantly, the galaxy had discovered something unprecedented in the form of humanity. They were not the allies we called for, Vexai said to his officers as they watched human ships collecting their dead from the battlefield. But they were exactly the allies we needed. In dialing the wrong number, we found the right species to answer. News of the victory spread across Earth, where billions of people celebrated humanity's first triumph in interstellar warfare. President Carter announced that Earth would join the galactic community as an equal partner, rather than a primitive species seeking acceptance. Ambassador Catherine Miller was appointed as humanity's first representative to what would become the new Galactic Council. The accidental first contact that had begun with a misdirected alien distress call had transformed humanity from an unknown civilization on the edge of space into the newest and most formidable power in the galaxy. Sometimes the most important conversations in history begin with someone dialing the wrong number, but reaching exactly the right person to answer the call.